Hello, my name is Arturo Martinez, and in this video we are going to review polynomial equations by answering the question, what is a polynomial equation? So let's begin. Before we talk about a polynomial equation, let's first consider the question, what is a polynomial? Well, a polynomial is an expression composed of one or more terms using addition or subtraction. In general, a term is composed of a coefficient multiplied by a variable, which represents an unknown value, and the variable is raised to an exponent also known as the power. Keep in mind, the exponent must be either 0 or any positive integer. In other words, 0 or 1 or 2 and so forth. Let's look at some examples of polynomials composed of one or more terms. The first polynomial is 2 times x raised to the power of 5 plus x. The second polynomial is 1/3 times the variable y raised to the power of 4 minus 5 times y raised to the power of 2. The third polynomial is a constant value 7. In these examples, notice that we are not restricted to the variable x. This means we can use any letter to represent a variable. Also, a constant can represent a polynomial term. To show why, let's look at the constant 7. This constant is equal to 7 times 1. Using the zero exponent rule, the value 1 can be written as x raised to the power of 0. And so the constant 7 is equal to 7 times the variable x raised to the power of 0. Thus, 7 and any other constant represents a polynomial term. For more examples of polynomial expressions, please review the video titled Polynomial Expressions. Now that we have talked about polynomial expressions, let's now consider the question, what is a polynomial equation? A polynomial equation is an equation that can be written in the following standard form. Notice that this form is considered an equation because it has an equal sign. Also in this form, we have the polynomial expression located on the left side of the equal sign. Again, this expression can be one or more terms. The first term is called the leading term, and the exponent for this term represents the degree of the polynomial. Note, the leading term is a term with the largest power. The last term, labeled a sub 0, represents the constant term of the polynomial. Let's look at an example. In this example, we have c squared plus 3 times c plus 2 equals 0. Our leading term, c squared, has an implied 1 in front of it, where the degree is 2. Likewise, our constant term will be 2. Let's practice the concepts we have covered so far by identifying the polynomial equations along with their leading term, degree, and constant term. Let's remind ourselves of the definition of the polynomial equation. The first equation we have is 9 plus 8 times x cubed minus 7 times x squared equals to 0. Let's reorder the polynomial terms so that the exponents are from largest to smallest. Now we have 8 times x cubed minus 7 times x squared plus 9 equals 0. Notice that the leading term is 8 times x cubed. Since the exponent of the leading term is the degree of the polynomial, we have that the degree of the polynomial is 3. Finally, the constant number 9 is the constant term of the polynomial equation. For our second problem, we have t squared minus the square root of t plus 5 equals 0. Let's look at the middle term negative square root of t. And recall that the terms of a polynomial must have exponents that are integers greater than or equal to 0. We can write the square root of t as t to the power of 1/2. Since 1/2 is not an integer, our second equation is not a polynomial equation. Now try this problem on your own. Identify the polynomial equation, including the leading term, the degree, and the constant term. Now that you have worked on these examples, let's go through them together. The first equation is x to the power of -1 plus 3 over 2 equals 0. Reading the first term, we have x to the power of -1. Note, this term has a negative exponent, but recall, a polynomial term only uses integers greater than or equal to 0. Thus, this example is not a polynomial equation. The second equation reads x cubed minus the square root of x plus 2 equals 0. Reading the middle term, we have a negative square root of x. Here we must note that this term can be rewritten as negative x raised to the power of 1/2. In other words, the exponent is not an integer. For this reason, our second example is not a polynomial equation. Lastly, we have 2 times x minus 3 plus 7 over 2 times x to the power of 4 equals 0. Let's first rewrite this equation from the largest to the smallest exponent. In other words, let's write the polynomial equation in descending order. In this form, 7 over 2 times x raised to the power of 4 is the leading term. The exponent of the leading term is the degree of this polynomial. Thus, 4 is the degree of this example, and -3 represents the constant term. This last example concludes our discussion on what is a polynomial equation.